Well, we've called this little protest today because there was an announcement yesterday that the ANZ Bank was going to sack another 600 workers from its head office. And this comes after 1,000 sackings last year. Now, this is a bank that is making record profits. Just in April this year, it announced a 3.18 billion half-yearly profit. That's 10% up on last year. They're making heaps and heaps of money, and yet they're sacking their workers. And that's not the end of it, because the CEO of ANZ, Mike Smith, is the highest paid CEO in Australia. He gets paid more than $10 million a year. That's what he got paid last year, more than $10 million. So it's totally outrageous. And when his pay was settled last year, the company's excuse was that they had to pay him $10 million because that was the price of getting an excellent CEO like him in the global market. Ironically, they're using the argument of a global market in the opposite direction to argue that their workers should be paid according to third world levels. So it's one rule for the top and one rule for the bottom. And if that was not bad enough, ANZ has been declared the dirtiest bank in Australia by Greenpeace, and for good reason. It puts the most money into the coal industry. This is an industry that the scientists have said needs to be phased out. And this is where the money is going. So in response to this, we say the only sane solution is for the community to take the banks like ANZ and the other of the four big banks into their own hands and run it for the sake of community need and for an ecologically sustainable way. Justified it. They said, oh, we've got to pay this guy this kind of money because that's what the global market demands, you know. If you want a good CEO, you've got to pay him $10 million. Now, strangely enough, the opposite logic is applied to their workers. They don't want to pay their workers the highest rates at the global market. They want to pay their workers the lowest rates on the global market. It's the opposite rule, one rule for the top and another rule for the bottom. It is ridiculous. It is completely ridiculous. These banks have been getting away with robbery. They've been getting away with what you could call banksterism. Banksterism, it's like gangsterism. They control a massive amount of money. The four big banks in this country control $2.3 trillion. $2.3 trillion. That's much more than the entire GDP of Australia. They're controlling your money. They're controlling your savings. And they're charging you for the privilege of it more often than not. It is ridiculous. We think it is now time for society to take this back under its control. These banks should be put into public ownership, and they should be run democratically by the community in the community's interests. They should be run so that it's fair and just to the workers, and it also invests its money in a way that's good for our society. Currently, the ANZ has been labelled the dirtiest bank in Australia. It's been labelled by Greenpeace the dirtiest bank in Australia, and there's a good reason for this. It invests billions and billions of dollars in keeping the dirty coal industry alive. Now, this is an industry that needs to be phased out. The scientists have told us we have to phase the coal industry out. It is irresponsible in the age of climate change to carry on. But ANZ Bank is continuing to be the biggest investor in coal. And that's why it's the dirtiest bank, and it's irresponsible. So not only do they treat their workers badly, but they misuse the money that you have entrusted to them to invest wisely in the future. We said this is completely untenable and has to go. And that's why we're having this little protest here today.